Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. I'd like to welcome everyone to Bridges Live. And Bridges Live is about giving information, understanding, and hopefully it brings you to an action. The show's on Monday. It's called Free at Last. I'm usually with Dr. Oshan Gadsden. He's a psychologist, and he's had a little patient today that was having some issues, which we believe in taking care of your mental health. And that's why I have Mr. Shannon Harris on. He's going to tell you a little bit about himself before we get into the science and health and healing. So, Shannon, please introduce yourself.
I am Shannon Harris. I was born in Chicago. I'm a practitioner of traditional Chinese medicine in regards to Qigong. Um, Also, for since the 80s, I've been heavily into music and computer science. And as I evolved in the practice later on in life, learning meditation, Qigong, yoga, and Eastern medicine, I began to create something called audio pharmacology. And from there, I call myself like a sound scientist. So I'm doing a lot of experimentation with the bridging of Eastern and Western medicine and technology. Yeah, hope that was a good explanation.
I hope so because we want people, and the reason why I started, because you've been on my show before, but when I started this Free at Last. I wanted to bring in the science of healing slower, so people can really grasp the small pieces as they are being taught this moving along, because we have talked about before. I think people have a trouble healing because they have a trouble understanding the information, and so they don't know where to go. Like, they know, they even if they admit to themselves that they're trauma filled, which is great. They want to get mentally health, they want to get spiritually awoken, they want to get physically well, they want to get emotionally happy. They don't know where to start because they haven't asked themselves the right question, or they haven't understood the right information. So how do we bridge that gap, Shannon?
Well, for me, it came through being sick all the time.
What do you say?
I have to
you
be
just
honest. It came
you
through.
just get tired of being sick.
Yeah. So the last straw that broke the camel's back was I developed bilateral carpal tunnel syndrome, where I was unable to use my hands, the left and right hand. And from there, I remember laying in the bed and asking God, Nater, whatever you want to call it, the universe, how did I get here and why? And I also swore to myself and made a pact that I would do better because I
You
actually
want to be
ignored,
better.
yeah, I ignored all of my symptoms for a while because I just kept it moving. Kept my body moving like a machine because I was working an IT job full time. I was touring as a DJ, and then I was running a recording studio and record label. And later on, that even it enhanced into a clothing line and events and all of these things. I had like 8 different jobs. Also, mowing grass and doing stuff around the house. So it was intense. It was intense. Yeah. So after that, I went to regular doctors. They made me feel sicker.
Mm.
So there was one moment I was like, so what else is there? And something came to me, like, people say download or, premonition, that I needed to seek a different type of healing. I remember having this one. they were like a Slavonic type of doctor. You know, Slavonic people, Eastern European, are very straightforward, and most of the ones I know, they're like straight to the point.
Yes.
They don't beat around the bush. They tell you like it is. So,
And it's also the face. They tell you like it is, like, and they're very strong in their facial expression, right?
all right, yeah, so like a hard,
Right. But
you know,
it's
they're
right. That's it. Loving, people are loving no matter who you are, but it's they're structured that way. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and I remember being at the doctor, and I was probably 2 times the weight that I am now, around like 285 plus, and he was, as soon as I walked in the room, I was his new patient, and he was like, "Whoa, wow, you're big," and and I was just like,
Whoa.
"Wait,
What do
hold,
you
you
what do
you
you
insulted me,
Yeah, how
yeah,
dare
like,
you?
yeah." So, I sat down, and he just kept, going in like that. Just, do you do anything outside of, like, sit at a computer all day? Do you play? Because the first thing is like, do you play basketball? And I was like, well, that's kind of racial. Just because I'm black, don't mean I play basketball. And and then you say, well, do you ride your bike? And you do anything outside of, and the answer to the question was no. I was like, I don't have time to do any of those things. So our relationship was like a strict, I don't want to say like a strict dad or a mentor, but I had to actually, it took somebody like him to break through my resistance to listening to my body. So he had researched this automatic transmission type of bike where it switches the gears automatically based upon the
Resist.
uh, the speed of the acceleration that you're pedaling, and it's hard work. It's almost like some people ride a single gear bike. It's similar to that, but it helps you along a little bit. But you have to work to get there. And I remember he recommended a gyroscope for my hands, and I still have that same gyroscope today. It was the first one. Then other people came out with other ones, and there's different types of therapies. And then from him, I went and found a female doctor because I needed somebody a little bit more soft. And she did homeopathy. So I didn't know what it was. I just read her bio. I was like, I need this right here. And she introduced me to, homeopathic medicine. And from there, it just kept going on and on and on and on. And till this moment, this present moment, I remember that time I was in that bed, and I promised. I said, if I can get my hands back, I won't let you. I promised to my body and to God, I won't let you down. I'm gonna stick to change. Yeah, and that's what did it for me.
I think it does take a lot of people sick for. Hopefully, they get tired from feeling sick. So let's get right in. So I'm going to share my screen because what we went over last time I did Free Last, we went over trauma. And can you see that, Shannon, right there? What I
Yes,
have?
I can.
Excellent. So what we have here is that one of the things I'm going to focus on this brain right here, and it's going to be the I got it right on here. So good. It's going to be the hippocampus. So the hippocampus has a lot to do, and it's right in there. Okay. Now, the hippocampus does a lot with fear. That's one of those areas that it has the amygdala, and we talked about that before. And that hippocampus there, when it comes in, it has something to do with long-term memory. Now, this is important because when we get introduced to trauma, no matter how trauma gets there, and is caused by a pressure, this trauma gets sent right here and it gets filed. So things start triggering that through what you call a sensory load. So it becomes a sensory load that triggers this hippocampus. Now, there are other things that also gets triggered too, the pituitary gland. right? And then also you got the hypothalamus also gets triggered. Everything gets triggered, but what happens with trauma, because it's also stored back here in this hippocampus, which is right in there, is that every time you thinking of the past, this starts triggering a chemical that's a negative chemical, right? The adrenal glands, the and it stops triggering the oxytocin in your body, starts triggering the dopamine in your body, it stops triggering the serotonin in your body. These are all good chemicals that gets released, but then there's bad chemicals that gets released. So just with the hippocampus alone, where it has that fear, flight, freeze, fear, signal progression, guilt that's in there, lack of success, but what you feel your success is, that's also triggered in there. And it also starts to trigger the, just to be here, the frontal lobe, right? It also triggers that frontal lobe and it blackens it out. It just makes it really dark. So you have no cognition, no reasoning skills, no developing of what you call understanding. So even if people read something that they want to get healthy and they're reading through the fear, you're going to have this blackened out issue right in here. So cognition doesn't even fully develop. So just that piece alone, and we're going to get more into the other parts of the brain. And this people why I brought Shannon in for us is because he's going to talk about how the music affects the brain and how it can heal and splinter that clog trauma where it releases. Go ahead, Shannon. Now I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then you can just go there. There
Okay.
you go. What'd you think of that in the first place? What'd you think about that explanation about the hippocampus?
I actually love it. In fact, the hippocampus was my intro into brain science.
Okay.
I was studying it was a video with a whole bunch of PDFs, and then I remember something that came on TV about learning something new every day and how it exercised the hippocampus. And then after that, I ran across this amazing guy who did this lecture on endogenous pharmacotherapy, and I always talk about that in my lectures about brain plasticity.
Yes.
So yeah, another thing, bring that back up right quick, and then I'll share my
Absolutely.
screen after you.
Let's see. Did it? I don't think it kept, but there you go.
Yeah, so that was an amazing example of the correlation of how different hemispheres and parts of the brain react. So what Dr. Paul Dyer is trying to say as well when he said that the frontal lobe gets blackened out due to the fear down in the hippocampus. What he's talking about when he's saying fight, flight, and freeze is those are our reptilian brain. So those are lower brain. So the lower brain is down here. Those are the actual natural responses to, emotional protection type of responses. So when you are in that state emotionally, you cannot access the frontal lobe or the prefrontal cortex, which is the higher state of thought and actions. And that's where our ethics and morals reside. That's where our divine consciousness resides. And when we talk about even the pineal gland and activation of that, that is actually the process that correlates and participates with that prefrontal cortex. So I just wanted to add that in there. So what Dr. Paul Dyer was saying, lower brain functions versus higher brain functions, and those traumatic events that prevent us from accessing those higher brain functions. So we stay in our reptilian and mammalian brain. So our animal states. Yeah. All right.
That is beautiful. Now, when people come to you, when it comes to sound, because sound allows those things to vibrate out,
Mm-hmm.
how do you play that? Do you use either some of the singing frequency of the singing bowls, or do you use excellent? Okay.
Oh, you want me to go?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so what we have, and we don't have a lot of time, so
No, no,
this is
we're
stuff
just
I teach in my class,
yeah.
but we're going to go through what that looks like, and that was a great introduction. I'm glad you're a master at that. I noticed that. So is this a full screen? Is it full screen
Yeah.
there?
Yeah.
Okay. So one fact is one of the only activities that activates, stimulates, and uses the entire brain is music. So there's a lot of neuroscience that is studying the brain reaction to music, and now music therapy programs are being implemented into medical science. So it's being implemented into hospitals and to treat children and autism and things like that. So this is another perspective of what Dr. Paul Dyer was talking about. This is why music activates all of these things in the brain. So when you're singing and say, for instance, you're dancing to a song, your motor cortex is activated because that, you know, enhances, no, that is the thing that makes you move to rhythm, right?
Right.
Then your prefrontal cortex controls behavior, expression, and decision making. So, say for instance, you start hearing a song and you just start tapping your feet and you snap. It's different parts of the brain that's being ignited. And then when you start singing to it, that's something else. You got to accessing the memory
Mm-hmm.
part of the brain because you have to remember the lyrics, right? Then you have to keep time. You know, those are all different parts of the brain, and the visual cortex as well. Sometimes you're actually seeing things as you're dancing or experiencing music. I'm not going to go real deep into this, but these are just a lot of the things that are ignited
So,
within the brain.
Shannon, I want you to go down to your, was it, I think it's your slide 7 where it lights up. So I'm going to talk about that real quick. How that works.
Okay,
That's 6
so
or 7. Yeah, that one. So when we talk about brainwaves, so now when we talk about brainwaves and hemispheres, the hippocampus plays a big part on the brainwaves and the hertz that it registers in, because that's because of the older part of the brain, it actually registers first. Go ahead, Shannon.
So let me go here. And this talks about the brainwave cycles. That was the next slide. So what we have is not only different hemispheres being ignited all at the same time. That's what music does, all at the same time. Other types of things, it uses certain hemispheres. This one,
Yeah.
all of them are ignited at the same time. So now we have what is called brainwave cycles. So we say brain states. So people have heard of these, the Greek, you know, alpha, theta, delta, beta, gamma. But this is what that really is. So the highest state is gamma, which is a superconscious. So to get to this level, you're going to activate the frontal lobe, the prefrontal cortex, the higher, you know, brain functions. And these are the things when people say they're human beings. If you're not activating your prefrontal cortex and the pineal gland, you're still functioning as an animal.
As an animal state.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what we're talking about is very important because we walk around, oh, I'm human, but we haven't accessed, you know, our higher states of consciousness.
We're still in the animal state. And that's why also words actually dictate what state you're in.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm used to
Mm-hmm.
is an animal state verbiage. what I'm used to. I'm so used to it. That because you're not in a you're not even in conscious state. You're not even in subconscious state. Matter of fact, you're so below subconscious because you're not even running the program. The program's running you. So when you use words, oh, I'm used to going this way. I drive this way. What bus do you get on? What train do you get on? What way do you go to work? I don't know. I just do that. That's the lower part of the state you're living in, an animal state. So you're not even functioning as a human being. And that needs to register to you like, man, I've been walking around all day not actively thinking. That's a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Actively thinking, not having thoughts, but actively participating in the thinking process. Go ahead, Shannon. Thank you.
And and what Dr. Paul Dyer is saying is most of our subliminal thoughts and the things that we think we're conscious of is what we've been entrained to think. So if you watch a lot of TV or what music you listen to, or even the ads that's on the expressway, the billboards, even conditioning from how you grew up, all of those things are implanted into your brain and are on automatic. Then if you add not having some type of practice to control emotions or remove triggers from emotions and work through the trauma, now those are programs inside of your mind that is causing you to react and act unwillingly. You think you're doing it. No, you're unwilling. You're responding to anger just because you're triggered and you have no control. The anger controls you because emotions are energy in motion. So you have these different brain states, and each of these are associated with different types of activity. So the superconscious, highly attentive states of consciousness and perception involved in the higher mental activity and the organization of information. The beta state.
Before you go on, I don't want I want to stay in the gamma. I want to stay where people can get to as a human being. Because if you go back to the slide up where it has the hippocampus, in that hippocampus where it says involve the music and memories of experience and context. Remember also the slide I had up, the hippocampus also has memory. And if you keep going back to past experiences and not activating the prefrontal cortex, you never reach the gamma state. That's important for healing process to take place. So go back to the gamma. There you go. So when you want to get to your superconscious, now the way it's laid out here, it doesn't mean you become superhuman. Actually, you just become human, because that superconscious state just means you are activating both hemispheres collectively at one. Go ahead, Shannon.
Yeah. So what we have is your dream state. If we start at the bottom, that's the least amount of activity, right? So you are deeply unconscious, asleep, astral traveling, dreaming, visiting other dimensions. And then, the next one up from that is your theta state. And you see there, it also has superconscious, because this is the state where our meditation, our deep meditation, or your REM when your sleep is happening. So it's drowsy, tranquil, unconscious, light sleep, shamanic journeying, access to the fifth dimension and non-ordinary reality, the upper and lower worlds. I know that sounds like really esoteric, but let's look at it like this. Everyone has had some weird dreams, right?
Right.
This is you're in a deep dream state, but then you're also a little bit awake. So you're waking up like, whoa, what was that? That dream did not make any sense, but it was deep. So then you have the alpha state, which is the subconscious. You deeply relax, light hypnosis. This is where your meditation starts, and if it gets deeper, goes down into the theta. You have your biofeedback, your daydreaming, just before and after sleep, and etc. And then you have the beta state, which is when you're fully awake, alert, ordinary reality. And this is where society pretty much stays, because people don't get a lot of, the sleep deprivation in society is insane. The time to meditate is insane. So, and the time to relax. So let's be honest, all these three at the bottom are not activated.
Right. Exactly.
So the beta state is kind of where we're at majority of the time. And we have to get to the gamma through the theta and the alpha, because you got to meditate, and you're training your mind to go ahead and get that high. So what I wanted to do too is, let's look at these cycles per second, and what would they sound like if they were frequencies?
Right.
On this scale from 80, let's say hertz, 80 hertz to all the way down to what, 0.5, all of these would be considered deep bass heavy frequencies. Some of them we can't hear. We can't hear when we get to 20 hertz, which would be the beta state. But I just wanted to give you like an idea of, I don't know if you can hear that bass. I have 40 hertz on now. It's so low, I can hear it in my headphones. If you had a subwoofer, and everyone who watches this, if you have a subwoofer, cut it on now. And I'm just going to let that roll just a little bit, and then I'm going to rise it up to 80 just to show you how that low hum is. And what's happening is, when they say cycles per second, how do we get to these cycles per second? We can use guided meditation.
Yes.
So breath rates induce your brain state. So if somebody goes, boo, you're going to be activated. You're going to totally be in that beta, and it's going to be even a little bit higher than that, because you're going to be. And then if you're not trained, as we were talking about earlier, with the emotions in the hippocampus, the trauma and the fear and the fight, flight, and freeze, you're either going to freeze because you're scared, you're going to run, which is flight, or you're going to fight, off of that.
Now, let me add something to what Shannon Harris, and if anyone wants more information on this, please contact us directly, because we're giving you an overview of what the information, you can hear it now because you're raising it up. Most people can hear it now. I actually could feel it, the lower delta. I could feel that, me personally, before you can never hear it. And the reason why most people have a hard time feeling it is because their body is not connected to the sensory perception. So I can feel, most people can feel things and not understand what they're feeling. I believe that is also true. So, but when I want to go to these signals, when he talked about breathing and these signals, it travels up the spine. The spine that's what it travels down. Now the spine, if you know, it has 33, and it connects to every organ in your body, all tissues, all systems is connected through the spine. And as your spine is allowing those vibrations and those hertz to travel up and down it actually activates different organs in your body. I just want to let you know that. So breathing from the brainstem activates the spinal system, which activates the hertz to connect to those healing frequencies to the organs.
And it's all energy. So we get energy from breath, and your nervous system, which is connected to the spine, it sends energy to signal from the brain on down. Your emotions are energy. The organs are energy. So what we're talking about is energy, and we measure energy in frequency and hertz, and that's the same way we measure sound. So that's how I begin to understand the interconnectivity between the two. And this is what we were showing a little bit. I jumped here, but another form or another way to get our brains to those delta, alpha, and different types of states outside of a breathing practice would be brain entrainment. So the most common part of brain entrainment is these binaural beats. A lot of people listen to them online. So the science of brain entrainment is the normal brain just has all the hemispheres and the neurons and things are just sparking the way they're entrained to do. And then after 15 minutes, you begin to see an entrainment process happens. And an entrainment process means the left and right brain are beginning to come in sync into the center. And then after 25 minutes, you see that picture, it's dead in the center. So binaural beats, frequency wise, looks like that. So whoop 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 whoop. And then isochronics is more like whoop. It's like and a space in between that. So these are the things that can happen via music, and how it inspires the brain, like what it does to the brain. So it can pull attention away from negative stimuli. It can release the feel-good chemical,
which is
Dr.
dopamine.
Right, Dr. Dyer talked about that earlier, which is dopamine. It stimulates brain waves. That's what I just talked about earlier. It improves your state of mind. A lot of times when you put on music, and I'll talk about that as we go down through the presentation, it actually focuses you, and you can do things more with precision, and then it reduces the perception of pain, and this is a huge thing.
Huge.
Yeah,
Huge. The perception of pain.
mm-hmm.
We got to underline that word. You got to remember, more things are perceived in a negative state, which creates a negative action in the body. I'll say it again. When you perceive a negative state, it gives you a negative action in the body. Go ahead, Shannon.
Yeah. So here are some, and I'm just going to flip through these so people can see some of the science. There's a lot of neuroscientists that are working with sound healers and sound therapists and music therapists and just regular scientists with the different types of brain technologies and etc. What's interesting here is this study shows the different types of effects that happen in the brain from just a hum, a song being played, words being spoken, a scrambling type of sound, so something like a police siren or something like that, and then an audition. And what they found here is, and I know that some of this sounds like very sci-fi and scientific, but the planum polari was the only thing. I mean, it changed. Everything was the same with the hums and everything, and that part was the only thing that changed when it got introduced to sound, to a song. And this chart reflects that. So that part is the green at the bottom. You can see from the left and right blue part, they're pretty much identical. The left and right yellow part, pretty much identical. The right one, yeah, they look identical. But the bottom, where the green is, and you look at the song is the all the way to the left, you can see more activity that it produced. So for me, sound gets people, if we're gonna deal with like a healing state or a calming state or homeostasis state involving the brain, I use sound to access the brain and the body. So not only just brain frequencies, I use a lot of body frequencies, but the most important thing that I learned is you got to get the mind.
I don't want to go on more, Shannon. I'll tell you why, because I think people will get lost.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we can come back and go over this again. I'd love to have you back on next week, and we'll take it from here so we can explain it such much
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll just put in what, how people can contact me.
Absolutely.
So my website is www.audiopharmacology, and it's up there. So I'll leave it there for a little bit.com. And then if you're interested in getting some of the programs, in forms of music online, you can either get it on audio pharmacology, you can go under music, or I'm on Bandcamp, and that's a direct link to there. And then I'm also on Instagram at Audio Pharmacology, PHARMACOLOGY, and Facebook, same thing, Audio Pharmacology. Yeah.
All right. Good. So let's get get back to the full screen. So with if people have any questions, please contact us because that's more important than what we're trying to help you understand. Now, make this small and slow. Is that there is a process that healing takes. Understanding this helps you confirm within the body why you're doing the practice you are doing. So, does it help you just putting on some good music and relaxing? Yes, but there's a negative state to that. There is a negative state to that. There's also other music that doesn't help you, and it has nothing to do with the beautiful lyrics. It has more to do with the tonation that the music's played in, the hertz it's played in. Will you know that? No, you won't, because that stuff is not permitted or printed on records. Now, do I feel good when I hear Motown? Absolutely. But I also know what type of signature is played in. So I'm not really listening to the signature of the rhythmic of it's played in or the hertz it's played in. I just really enjoy the music.
Mm-hmm.
But there is other music that is played on the same signature of rhythmic tones that isn't so good words wise, and it does have a negative effect. So that's like a whole other conversation, really.
Yeah. That's
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 that's where I come in. That's opening up the Pandora box that got me here.
right, right.
Yeah.
Because doesn't it? I mean, it really can be like because when you understand it, explain what I mean just a little bit, so people would be like, I need to know more. Because that's
Okay.
how. Because you can. Because we're keep going.
So what Paul Dyer is talking about is, do you know the ingredients in your food? When
Right.
you start looking towards health, you want to know if it has too much salt, you know, too much sugar, too much fat. Is it alkaline or is it acidic? So with music, it's the same thing. Most people just listen to music and don't know what the ingredients are in it, even though it makes them feel good. And I talk often about that, you know, emotional versus functional.
Mm.
So emotional music is gonna we can clap, dance to it, listen to it, turn up to it, and most of the music that we've heard is an emotional music. We don't live in a Western spiritual society,
Right.
where if you was to go and look at indigenous music or things like Buddhist music and things like that, all of their music is tuned to that. They're not gonna have a Buddhist song talking about big, butts and things like that. It just don't resonate with the
No.
culture and
No.
in indigenous culture as well. And then also the instrumentation is also tuned
To that.
to healing frequencies. So yeah, I'll leave it there. But
I'll leave
yeah,
it there. Right.
yeah.
Thank you, Shannon, so much for coming on. I do want like it's because I know people are gonna have some questions, and I think people need time to listen to this and develop their questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, I want to do this free at last. And the reason why it's different than I used to do mental health Mondays was because I used to talk about mental health. I want to get into healing. So I want people to understand what it is to heal. And this is that part of that small thing, the hippocampus, Then I'm going to get into the hormones that gets released, because we mentioned the serotonin, the oxytocin, the adrenaline, all these glands. So these things are factors even in sound and music.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Anything you want to say before we take off, Shannon?
Yeah. Any questions? Feel free. Thank you for having me. I appreciate your interest in what I do. I'm also highly interested in what you do, and I look forward to doing this again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Free at Last. This is Bridges Live Presents Free at Last, and I want everyone to have a beautiful, beautiful week. And we'll be talking more and have lovely, lovely life.